Greetings and salutations, Series 7 test takers. This is the Series 7 guru coming to you from my studio here in fabulous Las Vegas with another explication request. If you are looking for a free supplement, the best free supplement to your paid study materials is my YouTube channel. But if you are looking for a paid supplement and you already don't have it, a Kaplan Q Bank is, I think, a very worthy investment. That and the Kaplan quick sheets. With my Guru 10 discount code at checkout, you can get a Kaplan Q Bank for about $60, and you can get the quick sheets for a little under 20. We will help you with any question from any test prep vendor. Just easier if it's Kaplan, because you can just send me the QID, like this one, 1264822, and I can bring it up. We'll help you with any questions. Like I say, just Kaplan's a little easier. All right, so let's get started on this one. An ABC 40 call is quoted at 4.25, 4.5. An ABC 45 call is quoted at 1.5, 2. What is the cost of establishing a debit spread? Wow. So this has a lot of testable content that would usually be found in separate questions and not, one hellacious kind of question like this. I think the first thing I'd want you to be able to understand as it relates to this is when you're looking at the bid, let's just label that the bid. And let's label this the ask. Whoa. When you are looking at it, it's always from the dealer's perspective. So whenever a customer is looking at two prices, the customer is always going to pay the high price and always going to receive the low price. What's that called? The securities industry, right? In fact, you might want to just make a little mental note to yourself that market makers buy, let's get a smaller font here so we can fit it on here. Market makers buy at the bid, and market makers sell at the ask. The difference between those two prices is called my spread. So again, we could put this from the customer's perspective. The customer sells at the low price, and the customer buys at the high price. Oh man, it looks like Dina's really struggling here this morning. I need to get some more caffeine in my system. Customer sells. I'm just making my own exhibit here. By the way, you might want to consider making your own exhibit as well, because if you have an exhibit, sometimes it's a little easier to answer questions than when you don't have that exhibit there. Customer buys. And the difference between those two prices is my spread. That's how I make my living as a market maker. Okay, so they're saying I'm going to do a debit spread. So I should be able to recognize this as a spread, because I should know, test question, can you identify a spread? A spread is when I'm long and short the same type of contract. I'm long and short a same type of contract. So this is a call spread. They said this is going to be a debit call spread. And a debit call spread, we're going to have more money out than in. And so that means that what we're going to be doing here in terms of looking at this quote. So here's our quotes that we're looking at. Is we're going to be buying the 4.5, right? The 40 call. Lower strike call contracts always have greater premiums, and this exhibit reflects that. And so over here, I'm going to be buying this one, and I'm going to be selling that one. So I'm going to be doing an opening purchase at 4.5, and an opening sale at 1.5, lowering my out-of-pocket cost to 3 points or $300. So there's our answer. And the debit spread at the cost of establishing this is going to be 3 points or $300. Now, in the test, they wouldn't give you the choice of both of those. It would be one or the other in terms of that. Okay, let's just move that. By the way, you should know that whenever you pay money for a position, that's also going to be your max loss. So whether you're buying a call or buying a put or buying a straddle or buying a spread, that's going to be your max loss. That's one of those common things that run through, the entire test. Now, what are the other things you need to know about a spread? All the action in a spread takes place between the strikes. So, here our strikes are 40 and 45. I always joke that you can always tell somebody who hasn't traded options, who writes option questions, because no person who really does this would do this spread, because there's only 5 points to be made or lost here. I would rather just buy the call for 4.5 and be done with it. What Dean thinks is not testable. The 8 things you got to be able to do on the test is identify a spread. So you have to be able to tell me on this test, this is a call spread. The second thing you got to be able to do on the test, I'll link to a lecture in the video description, either, and pinned comment, either on an entire lecture on advanced option strategies, or maybe just a little small carve out on spreads. But once we do that, debit or credit, and the way we do that is we net the premiums. Now, again, in terms of process, it's a buffet. Take what you like, leave what you don't. But in terms of process, if you can track monies in and out of an account, you're not, struggling with contract specifications. In other words, you know what this means. So what I like to do when I'm doing my analysis and making my T, debit, I like to use money out, money in, but some people like to use a debit. Some people like to use pluses or minuses. But here, I'm going to put my 40 call. I like to stack my strikes just to make my analysis a little easier. And so there's my 40 call. And my 40 call is 4.5. And here is my 50 call. And my 50 call, I brought in my 45 call, excuse me. I brought in 1.5 for the 45 call. And so when I net those premiums, that's how I ended up with the 3, right? 4.5 minus 1.5 is 3. When I'm buying, I pay the ask. When I'm selling, I receive the bid. And so we've already actually answered this question. I'm just using it now as a way to go over other things that you get asked on the test. And you're going to be asked about debit, exercise. Yeah, exercise would be bueno, right? If this got exercised, I would like that, because I'd be buying the stock at 40 and selling the stock at 50. And so that would be bueno. Or 40. I don't know why I'm saying 50. I think my brain is just struggling with the idea, why would I sell the 45 call and have a 3-2 risk reward ratio? So I'm just struggling a little bit, because, there's a danger in knowing this so well that you struggle with, trades that don't make kind of economic sense. But anyways, that would be bueno. That would be bueno. I'm just illustrating that to you. And then the hardest part that they get is this idea of the difference in the premiums getting larger or smaller. But, good news for us, we don't need to know that, because debit, exercise, widen goes together all the time. So once we determine it's a debit spread, we can rock and roll. Now, again, what this refers to is that when I go to offset, I got to be able to close this out for more than I paid, more than my 3, right? So that's what we mean. We mean the difference in these premiums when we close out. That's the hardest card to get. I've got a whole lecture on it in the playlist for options, but that's what we're referring to. We're referring to that if we close this out, we got to have more than 3. Okay, so the next thing we got to do is max gain, max loss. Well, we already got our max gain, max loss. And, the max gain is the difference in these strikes less the debit. So we paid 3 to get rolling. That was our cost of admission here. So let's just put that there. There's our 3. And that was our net debit. And that was our loss. Let's put that in red. Now you can either memorize that the maximum gain in a debit spread is the difference in the strikes less the net debit. I just think it's easier, by the way, to just say, well, if I spent 3, then what I can make is the difference, right? The 2. If I buy the stock at 40 and sell at 45, I'd make 5. I spend 3, so I make 2. I just think that's an easier way to go. But my max gain here is 2. And I kind of told you that's what Dean has been struggling with, is I explicate this spread because I just don't think a 3-2 risk reward ratio is a really good deal. I don't think that's a good deal because I could buy the call for 4.5 and be at risk for $450 instead of $300 and have unlimited gain potential. Now, yes, I lowered my out-of-pocket costs, but by doing so, I put in the ceiling here, right, at 45. All right, so we've got our max gain, we got our max loss. The next one we got to be able to do is our break even. Now, test taking trick, the break even is somewhere between 40 and 45. It's somewhere between 40 and 45. I'm just noticing that the way the question has these strikes, I personally like to put my strikes, as I said here. So let me just do that again. So here's a 40 call. There's our 40 call. And let me just get a bigger font for us. And there is our 40 call, and here is our 50 call. And as I said, the 40 represents the floor, and the 50 is the ceiling, right? So there's 10 points of market action. Why do I keep saying 50? I apologize. I am just really not liking that 45 call. There we go. All right, so see, that's why I don't like it, by the way, because we're actually only playing between those two, and that just kind of sucks. But anyways, I like to look at that this way, and then it makes it easier for me to be doing my debit, thing here, right? So here's my 3. And let's put that in there. And remember, that was my loss. By the way, they ask you max gain, max loss. It's got to be numbers that add up to 5. So that's kind of a test taking trick. You can eliminate any numbers that don't add up to the difference in the strike. So the max gain here is 2. And remember, this was also represented our max loss. As we said, there's 8 things you got to know about a spread. Okay, the next thing we got to be able to do is break even. And again, we have a nice mnemonic for break even, and that mnemonic doesn't matter where it's a debit call spread like this is, or a credit call spread, is CAL. CAL. And CAL stands for call add to the lower. CAL stands for call add to the lower. So in a call spread, we're going to add the net premium to the lower strike. Now, another test taking trick is that has to be somewhere the break even. You could chop the answer set here and eliminate any break even number offered to you that isn't somewhere between 40 and 45. And so call out of the lower means we're going to take the lower strike, 40. We're going to add our net premium, and we're going to get our break even of 43. Now, nobody does things to break even, right? Nobody does things to break even. We do things to make money. But, that's our break even. Okay, so the last thing we got to do is determine whether it's bullish or bearish. Bullish or bearish. And the lower strike in a call contract always dominates the position. The greater premium. Lower strike calls always have greater premiums. And how we determine bullish or bearish is by that greater premium. And so if we look at what I'm really doing here, what sandbox am I playing in? The thing that I'm really doing here is a long call. And so this is a bullish position. Now, the other trick you could use, we got another kind of a trick. It's just a trick, but it works every time. And then remember, you needed to be above that. And there's our ceiling, right? The other trick you can use is what's called bulls, because you're long the lower strike. Because you're long the lower strike. As always was bullish, whether it's call spread or put spread, whatever it is. I'll link to a lecture, but there's our dominant position, which is this 40 call at 4.5. Right? That's what dominates that position. So this is a bullish spread. So let's put that in there. And boom. And let's put our mnemonic, which was bulls, because you're long the lower strike. Okay, so let's review here. Let's review. Let's go all the way back. Let's see if this thing will go all the way back. Okay, an ABC 40 calls quoted at 4.25, 4.5. ABC 45 calls quoted at 1.5, 2. What is the cost of establishing the position? The first thing we're testing you on is, do you understand the bid and the ask and whose perspective it's from? So, market makers buy at the bid, they sell at the ask. I think a good way to remember it is customer will always sell at the low price and buy at the high price. Again, it's not a lecture. I'm not going to go into, car dealers and analogies for you. You can, review the lecture on that. But anyways, so that's the first thing we got to have to handle on. Then it says, what is the cost of establishing a debit spread? A debit spread is when we got more money out than in. So that means we're going to be buying or paying the greater premium. So here we're going to be paying 4.5 for that 40 call, and that's going to be the dominant position. We're going to be receiving 1.5. So we're net out of pocket for this position 3 points. We said all the action takes place between the floor and the ceiling. And we said, here's our T. And we said we need the difference in the premiums to widen. So we've identified it: debit or credit, exercise or expire, widen or narrow. 8 things. We've got 4 of them already up here. Then we have to be able to determine max gain, max loss. We said the max gain, max loss always equals the difference in the strikes. And so, there's a floor at 40, a ceiling at 45. Our maximum loss was 3, so our maximum gain is 2. You can either memorize that the maximum gain in a debit spread is the difference in the strikes less the debit. I just think it's easier to say there's 5 points to be made or lost. I spend 3, so I can make 2, but whatever gets you there. Right? And then we got to be able to do break even. We use CAL for our break even, call add to the lower. And we get 43 as our break even. The break even's got to be somewhere between the strikes. And then our last thing we got to do is bullish or bearish. The larger premium dominates the position, which is the long call. So this is a debit call spread, which is bullish. All right. So I hope you found that helpful. And just send your explication request my way. Remember, inch by inch. The Series 7 is a cinch, yard by yard. Your Series 7 is hard, and I'll see you for the next explication.